All right, for all you sports fans out there, this next case study is going to be a fun one. We're going to look at baseball team stats. So, the data set summary, we're looking at Major League Baseball team statistics by season for 21 seasons from 1995 through 2015. So, not a ton of rows of data, it's only 624 observations, but we have a huge number of dimensions and measures that we have to work with. So, dimensions include the season start date, the year, the league, the division, the team name, both abbreviated and full, and then some binary yes-no flags to indicate whether the team won the division, the wild card, the league, or the World Series. So those binary flag fields will be really helpful tools that we can use to filter and sort. And in terms of measures, you've got all of your classic baseball stats here: games played, wins, and losses. You have hitting stats like runs scored, at bats, hits, doubles, triples, home runs, walks, strikeouts, stolen bases, caught stealing, and then pitching or defensive stats like runs allowed, earned runs, earned run average, complete games, shutouts, and saves. So we're actually only going to be using a small handful of these fields, at least in the case study kickoff, but they are available to you for you to explore however you choose. So concepts covered in this kickoff, we're going to talk about sorting and filtering, pretty basic stuff. We're going to use some pivot charts and slicers, and then practice a few calculated fields. So let's go ahead and dive in. Alrighty, with your pivot table case study workbook open, go ahead and select the baseball team stats tab. And we just kind of have a fixed range of data here, so we can press Control A to grab all of that data. And actually, we don't want these extra rows, so just select one of the fields in the range and press Control A again, and that will just get you to row 625, which is what we want. We can press Insert Pivot Table on a new worksheet, and let's go ahead and name this Baseball Pivot and format it with a nice light green shade. And here we go. So all of these fields to work with. Again, we're not going to dig into everything. We're just going to kind of start to scratch the surface here. But since we're looking at team level data by year, let's go ahead and take year, drag it into our row labels. Now you can see that 21 season time frame that we got to work with. And I'm going to take the full team name and make it a filter up here. So I don't care about a lot of these component stats. For now, I just want to start by analyzing win-loss records. So I'm going to pull in W for wins, L for losses, do a little formatting here. So number format with 1,000 separator, no decimals. Same exact format for losses. There we go. And let's do custom header names here, wins and losses. And you might be wondering why these two fields are equal right now. It's a great question. But when you think about it, we're looking at data for the entire season across all teams. And for every given game, one team has to win, another team has to lose. So every game equates to one win and one loss, since there are no ties in baseball. So this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when we're looking at it across all teams. But when we drill into a particular team, like the Red Sox, for instance, now we're looking at that particular team's win-loss record season by season. So I want a better way to interpret these win-loss records. So what I want to do is add a calculated field that I want to call win percentage. And that will be defined simply as wins, or W, divided by G, which is games played. Press OK. We right-click and format that as a percentage with one decimal point. There we go. Now we have a single column that kind of captures the information in the wins and loss column. So this is win percentage. 1995, the Red Sox win percentage was 59.7%. Now I can use this field to really start digging into the data and analyzing it a level deeper. So for instance, for the Red Sox, I can sort these seasons descending by win percentage to say, okay, 2004 was the Red Sox best year in the sample in terms of win-loss at 60.5%. 2012 was the worst year with a win percentage of 42.6. And same goes with any other team. I can change the selection from the Red Sox to the Cubs, Now I can see that the Cubs' strongest year was 2008 at 60.2, followed by 2015, and so on and so forth. I can also take team, drag team into my row labels, and pull year out and apply the same sort of sorting logic, descending by win percentage, to get a sense of which teams had the strongest win-loss record over the course of the entire sample. So we see that in general, the Yankees were pretty much the most dominant team over this 21-year period, with an average win percentage of 58.7. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got teams like the Marlins and Rays at 43 and 40%, respectively. And now we're looking at just kind of all the teams laid out in a single list, but we can also show the hierarchies here since we do have the division and league dimensions to work with. So for instance, we could pull in division ahead of team in the row labels and split things out by the Central Division teams, the East Division teams, and the West Division teams. We can also pull league in to add one additional layer. So now the American League Central, the National League Central, and so on and so forth. And that kind of just gives a different context to our sorting options and our win percentages here, because now we're looking at these teams ranked by win percentage within each particular division. And what's cool about this view is that now I can drill down to any particular year or season, 2015 for instance, and this just visualizes the actual final standings at the end of the season. So the Royals won the American League Central, the Blue Jays won the American League East, the Cardinals won the National League Central, and so on and so forth. So kind of a cool way to organize this view using a pivot table. But let's go ahead and drag league and division back out. And why don't we play with some of those binary flags that we talked about for division win, league win, wild card win, and World Series win, which we'll see here in these 4 fields. So I'm going to drag each of these 4 fields into my filters. There we go. And now what I can do is deselect my year filter, so I'm looking at the entire sample again, and tweak these filters. You can see that they're all either yes or no, to say, okay, show me a list of teams that won their league. So LG win is a league win. So this is a list of teams that won their league in some season within this sample. So we've got the Braves, White Sox, Angels, Indians, etc. And the same thing goes with any of these. So World Series win, show me all the teams in the sample that won the World Series in one of these seasons. So pretty cool. Now I know which teams won the World Series at least one time in these 21 seasons, but we can also drag in year, like so, to see which teams won more than once and which particular years they won. So Braves only won one time in 95, Angels in 2002, Yankees we see won 5 years. They won in 98, 2009, 1999. If I want to sort these, let's go into Tools, Design, Report Layout, Outline Form, which will split out those row labels, make it a little bit more readable as well. Now I can sort year, smallest to largest, instead of ranking by win percentage. And now it's a little bit easier to read. So the Yankees won 5 times in 96, 98, 99, 2000, and 2009. Red Sox won the World Series 3 times, Marlins twice, Giants 3 times, Cardinals twice. Pretty cool stuff that we can extract just really with some very simple pivot table sorting and filtering tools. But now let's return back to our original win percentage trending view. So I'm going to clear out team and defilter or unfilter that World Series win field. And instead of showing both wins and losses along with the win percentage, I really only need win percentage at this point. So I'm going to pull wins and losses out. And like we talked about, the win percentage will always be 50% when you're looking at all teams rolled up. So why don't we go ahead and select a specific team. Why don't we search for the Giants here, filter just on the San Francisco Giants. And now what I'd like to do is add a pivot chart to help visualize this trend and also potentially analyze some interesting correlations as well. So since I have my simple view set up here, I can go ahead and insert a pivot chart right from my pivot table tools option. and column chart will do just fine. So I'll insert that column chart in my Analyze tab. I don't want these field buttons. I can just kind of spread this out a bit. So this does a nice job showing the Giants' win percentage and how it's trended year over year. So we can see where they've had strong seasons, where they've had weak seasons, where maybe they're rebuilding the team. But a nice kind of simple but clear visualization here. But I want to go a level deeper, and I want to understand what might be correlated with win percentage. So one thing that comes to mind, and you might take a different approach, but in this case, why don't we look at the team batting average? Because batting average is a pretty good indicator of hitting ability, which should in theory translate to runs scored and therefore wins. So I'm going to select a field in my pivot table, go into my tools, fields, items, and sets, and add a new calculated field for AVG or average, and that will be defined as hits or H divided by at bats or AB. So that's batting average. When I press OK, you'll see that that new field has been added to both my table and my pivot chart. And to visualize this a little bit more effectively, what I'm going to do is actually change this from a clustered column, which it defaulted to a different type of chart. I'm going to go all the way down here to combo, and I want my win percentage to be shown as columns as is, but I want average to be shown as a line chart on the secondary axis. And I'm choosing secondary axis so that I can edit each of these series and each of these axes independently. So I'll press OK. We're now showing our two metrics or two measures at once, and already we can see a pretty nice correlation between batting average and win percentage. Now we know that correlation doesn't necessarily prove causation, but in this case we can be pretty confident, at least directionally, that hitting performance is generally a solid driver of win percentage. So now let's make just a few formatting tweaks here. I'm going to right click, format the data series. In this case, instead of orange, I kind of want a nice dark blue line there, and I prefer the smooth line, so I can check that box down at the bottom. And I've got my legend here showing me which series I'm visualizing as columns and which series I'm visualizing as lines. So my last step, just to add a little bit more interactivity to it, is to actually insert a slicer as well for team. And that way, right now I'm looking at just the Giants, which you can see if we scroll down is the one item selected. But that way you can select any team and get a sense for how the correlation looks and how the win percentage and batting average have trended for any individual team. Now you may have noticed that these markers showed up formatted in orange. To be honest, I have no idea why that happened, but if you're curious or if you don't like them, I'll show you how to change those. So you can go back into Format Data Series, go into your Fill and Line. There's this Marker tab you can click on, drill into your marker options, and it just kind of automatically added these weird orange circles. So I'm going to say let's do built-in markers with these little diamonds, size 6, and let's fill them with white and give them a solid border in this dark blue. And I'm going to close this. There you go. That looks a little bit better than the random orange. And you can format everything else kind of as you choose. You can put the label or the legend down at the bottom. But obviously the formatting options are essentially endless here. So there you go. Obviously a ton of directions that we could have gone with this data set, but hopefully this approach will give you some ideas and some inspiration to get started exploring this data on your own.